All right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. How we feeling? How's everyone doing today? A beautiful Tuesday here in Toronto.
It's very hot.
You know what?
Very hot.
I have to come to the table with something.
Uh-oh.
Something's happened to like one half of the air conditioning in my car.
Did you call Jiffy?
Jiffy doesn't do car mechanical stuff. I don't believe. I should probably know that.
You blurted out car at the end. My apologies.
You know what? That's a great call, though. I'm going to give you an answer by 7 o'clock. But last time I checked, I don't think Jiffy sends over
a mechanic.
That would be take awesome. Care of business. But it may be possible, and I should know that, and I will know that, and I will give you a definitive answer. Yeah. But I've self-diagnosed, like my wife and I, we have no clue what we're doing, but we pretend like we know what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And we've self-diagnosed what we think is the issue. So we're going to fix it, but the one side of the car, which happens to be where the driver sits, it pumps out heat all the time. Oh. It's constant heat.
Like 27 degrees you're driving?
Yes, I'm driving. Now,
the only thing similar I've ever heard is I used to play a trick on my buddy where it would be steaming hot in the summer, and I would crank what he thought was the AC, and it would be straight gas heat in the middle of summer. And I would see him melting in the pad and be like, oh, man, the AC's taking a long time.
Right.
I got one step
That's
further.
my life right now.
The most gutless thing you can do is it is so hot out and you're pumping the AC, you turn on that seat warmer. Pay attention to it. And
you just watch. If you just had somebody who's a monster and had some spicy wings, crank up that seat heater and they'll die.
Yeah.
They'll die.
Someone will die. It may not be that guy.
Yeah,
It may be the person that's driving around. The flip side of it is you get into the cold and you turn the AC on the chair. Like, you know how you have a cooler? That's the creepiest feature in a car.
I've got it in my car.
It's creepy. I have it in mine
cold
as well.
air on your
it's
back.
Cold air, like your seat, and
why
it's
not?
Real, but dude, it's a weird vibe.
Yeah.
Like it's like you're getting. I don't want to go too far with this, but it's like really kind of invasive. You're like, I don't know. I never turn it on, but
great.
I'll do that.
The monster we just talked about, it's better than every time he gets out of the car. You got to just take the car seat and put it in a dumpster.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
you got to cool things down.
That's
every ride. It's like eject dumpster, the whole seat.
The premeditated coolant on the guy's chair is really sending a message.
It is.
Let me go and turn that on for you because I know what's about to happen here.
I wonder what would happen if, like with technology, you stood in front of the car door and it just made an assessment of what you need when you sit down.
That's AI. I'm telling you, it's.
You know what I mean? Like it just looks at you and said, "You just mowed a pile of wings. You're gross. You're a monster." And you sat down, and all of a sudden, all these things just started happening.
It's a moose, it's a moose setting. That's what it is. Like the setting is moose.
Just horns come out, antlers come out of the headrest on the seat, and then air conditioning starts blowing all over you.
Yeah. Or the flip side, they do the full scan and they realize there's a pack of cigarettes in your pocket. They're like, we got this thing filtered. The air is immediately filtering. The windows go down to an appropriate level. Like just picking off everything you possibly need.
The ashtray pops out of
the ashtray comes out. It's not accessible
and it just
before then.
Right on the new age screen. Windows up darts? Question mark.
You press accept or not.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
Thing is, though, I don't know if new cars have ashtrays. Do they?
That's a good question.
They don't.
Well, not enough people smoke anymore.
No.
Like the other day, I went to blow up some pool floaties, and you got to plug like the air thing plugs into like a cigarette lighter in the car.
Sure. That was always
I'm like,
a big thing.
I don't know where this is. Like, I don't know if I have one in my vehicle, a cigarette lighter.
Right, the lighter that you used to push in and then it would heat up.
You're lighting darts that way. Like, I can't remember the last time I've been in a vehicle that has an ashtray.
An ashtray.
No. The King Daddy Topper is not just an ashtray, 14 butts in it.
Right. An ashtray that has been well oiled and is absolutely.
Like, why can't you, when you're tooting along the road, why can't you toss that onto the road? You got to ash that thing out in your car and keep it in there.
It's amazing how much society has changed, and for the better, without question. With like considering people's health and all that kind of stuff, but also taking freedoms into consideration.
What about
that
people ripping darts at a desk? Like,
but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But remember, growing up, like my parents didn't smoke. My dad smoked when I was younger, but he quit. I was probably 10 years old and he quit. And I remember how difficult it was. He was on edge for a while.
Owly.
He was on. In fact, I'm not going to get into the details of the trade. The Leafs made a trade that he thought was terrible. He was already on edge.
It was probably Cordic Courtnall.
It was something in that vein. They made a deal where it was like, what? He was so angry. And a lot of it was based on the fact
he had no nicotine
that
in his
he
system.
wasn't he was trying to quit smoking, and the Leafs are jamming him up. So he's trying to quit, and the Leafs are making dumb trades, according to him. So that was setting him completely off. I remember that vividly. But by that point, my parents didn't smoke. Yeah, we always had ashtrays in the house, and if like you were having company over, it was
right
like you got to put it out.
My Auntie Liz would come over, and there was an ashtray the size of like a
not going outside. Auntie Liz isn't
right
going
there.
outside.
No,
it's like you're going to chew on it. I'm over. If you want me to, I'm coming over.
My Auntie Liz drove a 2-door Cadillac that was 25 feet long.
I love it.
And she'd come bombing around the corner, pull up, and she'd roll into the living room. Yep, the ashtray would be sitting right on the table, and 25 darts later, she'd be out the door.
Yeah, see you later. Honking her horn, and off she goes in St. Albert, Alberta. Anyway, it's a different world now.
Yeah,
what's not different today compared to yesterday is the amount of heat that continues to be on John Schneider and Vladdy Guerrero Jr. Well,
what's going on?
That was pathetic again last night. I'll say this about the Jays. Those two games, the final game in Texas, the first game in Miami, that is the most embarrassing 2-game stint I can think of in a long, long time. In a long, long time. You have a 6-0 lead in Game 3 of a tough series against a good Rangers team on the road, and you puke it away to that extent. And then the reverse happens the next night, where Barrios, who had been so good, and he blew up. Let's call it what it was. That he got hit, and he got hit hard. And John Schneider, I'm sure, is looking at his team saying, all right, boys, like, we're not going to quit on this one, right?
Right.
Because Texas didn't quit on it yesterday. We're not going to quit on it today. And that's precisely what happened last night. Like, they were terrible last night. Their consistent or lack of consistency at the plate is awful. They struck out 10 times, 0 walks. That is a terrible approach at the plate.
Yeah, it's creeping around something being wrong, bigger picture than not being good enough. And I've told you this many times where we've looked at teams throughout the NHL or any kind of like small dysfunction where it's like, My old man told me this when watching sports. He's like, there's something wrong there, and it's more than just their decor is not good enough, Right. So they're kind of like edging towards where it's like, what the hell's up here? Does somebody hate somebody? Or, is it like guys are pissed at Vladdy because I don't know what it is. But it's leaning towards there's something the matter in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's the way they look.
Well,
how many times when the narrative at the beginning of the season was we're going to be more business-like, veterans, bring in these guys, Kiermaier, Belt, and Looklore, guys that love baseball, eat, sleep, drink baseball, and the goofy errors might be a thing in the past or trending towards that. And now we got these sections of the season where it's just mail-ins, where it's like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. Well, that I think is what is putting a spotlight on John Schneider, is that he was supposed to bring a completely different approach to the game. Now, fundamentals have been a problem at times this year. There have been a lot of issues where you can look at it. And last night, he didn't love some of the different mistakes they were making in areas that should be shored up for a pro club,
right,
and a quality pro club. But the arms were terrible last night. Like they gave up 19 hits. You give up 19 hits and 11 runs.
You're not winning a game.
You're not going to win a ball game. The same thing the night before, regardless of the 6-0 lead that they had. They gave up a ton of hits and a ton of runs. So the arms are an issue. The bullpen is in flux right now. But they have too many guys that are stepping up to the plate that are, quite frankly, not bringing anything to the table. And again, Vladdy's an example of that. Early in the game last night, 2 on, no out. He hits into a double play. And he goes 0 for 4 last night. Chapman 0 for 4 last night. It's killing him. Like, it's killing him. Like, Bichette had a couple of hits again last night. Bo is doing what he has consistently been doing.
Yep.
There are a number of guys you can point to any given night and say, okay, I appreciate what he is bringing. But the fact of the matter is the big boys on this roster, specifically Vlad Guerrero Jr., not there, the bullpen not there. And Schneider has looked overwhelmed on multiple occasions, including Game 2 of the wild card, which was a really, really embarrassing moment, I think, for the whole organization. But his bullpen manipulation, albeit poor, I believe in a lot of cases is coming directly from the management anyway. It's almost exclusively analytically driven.
Numbers.
If we're in this situation, go to this guy. If it's this guy, go to that guy. And the fact of the matter is, I think the players deserve 90% of the heat because I think players get off the hook in Toronto way too often. It always goes to the coach, the manager, the GM, the president, and don't get me wrong, all of those guys, specifically with the big three teams, Leafs, Jays, Raptors, have had their moments to shine, where it is absolutely worthy of criticism, and they're worthy of the spotlight that they get. But the players are not performing. They are not performing. And as much as Schneider deserves heat, I think the hitting coach deserves a lot more heat than he's getting, and he's starting to. Martinez is really starting to. Pete Walker's starting to. And I think management, you're looking at what they've done. They hired Schneider. He had no big league management history, right? They hired him. And a year later, they're going to get rid of him because they can't get a big hit in a big moment, or their bullpen stinks, which is an issue that Ross Atkins has to account for. He put it together.
Now, is there a plan to replace Manoah or just interim?
It's not going to happen now. It's too hard to do it this far in advance of the trade deadline.
Right.
Like to get someone of significant, and you can't replace what they had penciled in for Alek Manoah.
Right.
They had 190 plus innings, probably a sub-3 ERA stud. You're not finding that. No. There's no way you're going to find that right now.
But it's makeshift right now.
It's completely makeshift. And now you got Kikuchi on the mound tonight, who's been fine.
Yeah.
But is anyone thinking that Kikuchi's going to give him 7 tonight? I'm not.
Well, you hope.
Based on reality,
the only guy
you could hope.
The only guy
is Ross or Mark going to speak today? Because they're are any of them going to come down and say, look, this has got to, I don't know. I always wonder when you're going to hear from one of them when this is going on.
Well, Shapiro, we haven't heard from. That's the nature
of
Reno. Basically, the renovations. That was when we heard from him. And to be fair to Mark, when he comes on to speak about the renos, using our show as an example, you allow for that. There's intrigue in that.
Yeah.
And then you spend 10 minutes talking about the club, and he'll answer questions on that. But he allows Atkins to go out there and speak on the club, just like Shanahan allowed Dubas and will soon allow Trey Living to do that. Masai's a little bit different because Masai will be in the forefront. Right. But in terms of the day-to-day stuff, it's generally Bobby Webster that goes out there and speaks. And, so I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't expect to hear from Shapiro. And I'm not sure it's wise to hear from the GM right now, unless it's going to be the classic vote of confidence, which I'm not sure John Schneider really wants to hear either, because who knows what that's supposed to mean.
Well,
they're not going to fire John Schneider less than a year on the job when they just handed him the keys and the whole point was for him to bring a completely different attitude.
And you've got underperforming players.
And you've got blatantly underperforming players.
That's the thing. Why trot him out? I don't know if you want to hear from management unless, what could he say to calm the masses?
Well, here's a question with all that is going on in Toronto right now.
Okay.
Blue Jays, they're the only ones that are on the field. Right. Taking the Argos out of it, who are the best team in the East, and we think probably win a Grey Cup this year.
Yes.
Right? I think I can speak for all three of us through one game. Jays are the only team that's actually playing, but there are a million rumors surrounding the Raptors. The draft is on Thursday night. Free agency right around the corner. Gary Trent just opted into his player option, so he's likely going to be a part of the program moving forward. And there's a million rumors hanging around the Leafs.
Right.
Who would, if you could have an exclusive sit-down with full truth serum, who would you pick? Let's start with the presidents. Shapiro, Shanahan, or Masai?
Shanny for me.
You go with Shanahan?
Yeah, I mean, they're just
truth serum about what?
About
what the
everything that's going on, everything that's been happening, all of the plans.
It would be Shanny for
why
me because
Dubas
I would
is out,
go,
why Nurse is out, all that stuff.
I would say Shanny for me because I just, and you give Brad Treliving time to get settled into the job, but I would love to know candid, and if it was true, Serum, what happened? What did you think? Where do and then what do you think moving forward? Does Brad Treliving have autonomy to make a big move if you wanted to, that type of, or if he wants to?
Right.
That's the one for me.
I want to talk to them all. I want to talk to all three of them because I have similar questions for all three. They're all kind of in that area where it's like, what do you think of the way that guy plays or has played in critical moments? What are you going to do to try to get the team over the top? What do you think? I have similar questions for all of them. For Masai, it's how do you think you get back to the promised land? There's just, I don't know. They're all in the same boat to me. I know you got to pick one, and I'm a hockey guy, so I guess I could say Shanahan, but I have almost eerily similar questions for all three.
Yeah. I think they're all in a similar boat.
Yeah.
In terms of what they've achieved and what the expectations have been.
All have high views of their own team. I don't know if Masai honestly has visions of his team being this contender because they're just flat out not. But Shanny and Ross and Mark have all said this team is they view it as a contending team. So
that's where I am too.
What's up?
I think the Raptors are the farthest from what we would believe challenging for a championship, correct? Out of
the
those
lowest
three?
expectations
Lowest
of the three.
expectations,
But
yeah.
still, I would argue they probably didn't meet their expectations this year, albeit not far off. They finished, ninth in the East as opposed to maybe fifth?
After watching the Jays for those two games, I don't know how close they are either.
That's kind of where I would probably go with Shapiro and its recency bias because they're playing.
Right.
They're playing right now, and they are playing a putrid style of baseball. They are puking away games that are really, quite frankly, embarrassing. And I understand it's 162 games, but I'd love to get a take on Shapiro. What are you seeing here with Vladdy? If we got true Serum here, be honest, because generally in sports, your best year, that's kind of how you're defined.
Right.
Right? And his best year, if there wasn't a guy named Shohei Ohtani, he would have won MVP unanimously. He had 48 home runs, and he was an absolute rock star.
Right.
But this year, he is so far behind that. It's concerning. It's concerning how far off he is statistically. I don't care about the underlying stuff. I don't care about exit velocity. People are buzzing about how hard he hit into a double play last night, as if that means any. It's the dumbest possible
that's the hockey equivalent
loser
of
stat.
their analytics where they should have won the game.
The equivalent of that is?
That's a zone entry.
No, it's not even. I'll give you, it's even better. Man, he shot that 106 miles an hour right in the chest of the goalie.
He hit that in the crest.
Who cares that he shot at 106 miles an hour or 112? He hit him in the chest.
Right.
So it didn't go in and it wasn't going to. It's just an embarrassing stat to even hang your hat on. But what's up with Vladdy? What's up with Manoah? Did you make a mistake on Schneider? How nervous is Schneider that Don Mattingly's hanging around?
Yeah, but
there's a lot of compelling angles to what's up with the Jays. And yet I wouldn't be surprised, even if it was truth serum, if he looked at it and said, even with as bad as we have played recently and how many fires that we've had to put out, we're still right there in a race.
Yeah.
So it's salvageable.
But Mattingly was added to this organization. Where is he in all of this?
Well, his name pops up all the time, right?
Wasn't he supposed to be a guy that
and he didn't
missed
have
the baseball and
he didn't have the greatest record as a manager either. And he was in LA with the Dodgers when they were pretty stacked.
Yeah.
But he is a lifer. He's got a different demeanor. He's obviously got history as a manager in Major League Baseball.
But it's
man,
not
you
good.
could,
These last couple games,
it's not good.
It's not good. Let's see if they have a response tonight. But
you would like to believe so.
Well,
you would like to believe they'll show a pulse tonight.
At what point do we say? Because I think we've said it 30 times on this show. Still got to play 162.
They got a lot of games left.
But you're right. But they got 88 games left. They're halfway. They're over halfway, or they're halfway.
They're
there.
almost halfway home. Almost halfway home.
So, it is. At what point do you go, all right, well, they've played a lot of games. This is what they are. That's what's concerning.
Well,
yeah. How many times are we going to do this where it's they get it together and then it's all of a sudden, what the hell are these guys all about? You don't know what you're going to get from the starting pitcher. And then the bats are invisible. It's the same deal, man.
Yeah.
So it's like, what the hell is this? Like, what is this version?
It's very frustrating to watch. It's very difficult to watch. And I think like a common theme in the city here with these three teams, and I have a different take on it from each team's perspective, is there's a difference between patience and complacency. And I think I'd use the Raptors and the Leafs as the example, as opposed to the Jays, who, again, are still playing, and kind of the heavy lifting has already been done. You're not going to make massive trades now that you're midseason. You can add pieces or you can subtract pieces, but you're not going to make like massive decisions based on who you identify as your core pieces.
Right.
Where the Raptors and the Leafs are in a position where they can do that right now. They are dealing with that part of the calendar where you can make monumental change if you want to. And there's a difference between patience and complacency. I think Masai Ujiri would argue he's being patient if he brings back pieces. Now, you can argue with him on that,
right,
but I think he would suggest they're still relatively young. They knew there were going to be growing pains. And he was patient, if you can recall, with the Lowry and DeRozan pair for quite some time.
Right.
To the dismay of many Raptor fans who were yelling for change. And he was waiting in the weeds. Kawhi became available. He pounced. Marc Gasol became available at the deadline. He pounced. Boom, a championship came. He has used that blueprint before. With the Leafs, and it kind of gets back to what I was trying to argue yesterday about how fans are going to respond to what they are going to do or what they're not going to do, is I think it has gone from patience to complacency. And what I mean by that is, hey, this is good enough, right? Like, it's good enough because we're going to win a bunch of games. We're going to go to the playoffs.
Right. And then break through at some point?
Hopefully. But no guarantees. Like, not going to make massive changes to try and push it over the top. We're complacent with getting there and seeing what happens. Yeah. Complacency, I think, is scary. And complacency, I think, bothers fans more than patience. Because I think it was patience with the Leafs the second time they lost to Boston. I think maybe patience with the Leafs when they lost to Columbus. It started shifting to complacency when they lost to the Habs. Definitely last year.
From what? Like from the fan base on the team, or just the team's view of itself?
I think the view of how Shanahan and company have decided to move forward with the team. That they're complacent with core four, Riley, Keep, and it's good enough. And it is good enough to make the playoffs every single year.
110 points.
Absolutely.
Do all of that. But so is that formula right now, we're looking at, what is it, year 8 or year 7?
It'll be going into year 8, effectively.
Playoffs, bunch of points, bunch of wins, regular season. And then it's been first round losses and one playoff win, one playoff round win. You're going to go with that formula again. But what is different? Like, how are you going to get to that second round?
And are you waiting to do something different?
Right.
Like, again, with using the Raptors and Masai, like, patience means you're waiting for it to grow or for something to change that you can take advantage of. And the Kawhi deal is a once in a lifetime situation.
Right.
Once in a lifetime. But he was patient with DeRozan, patient. Boom, it was there. I pounced. I could be wrong, but I don't get the sense that the Leafs are like, okay, we're going to wait until there's a deal we know we can make, and that's when we break this up.
Right.
It appears as if it's more, hey, this is what it is, and we're going to hope it works.
It would just be interesting.
For an 8th time.
You're right. I want to know.
8th time.
I want to know what the value of players are. And what I mean by that is, we had Drager on the show yesterday. Drager said that Brad Treliving is one of the most active managers in the league. So what I get from that is, if everything's on the table, even though it's not, you would have to think, you call and go, player X, what could you get for, what would you give me for him? What would you give, or vice versa? I would love to give you this for that guy, even if you don't think he's available. And I'm saying like a Marner. Mm-hmm. If you don't believe, like, I don't think Marner should be available or will be available. But if a manager calls and says, I'll give you this, like, I think everything has to be explored. Again, I'm not trying to trade him out of town. I'm saying there has to be a thought process where nobody's safe outside of, we'll say it, Austin Matthews.
Sure.
So, okay, let's see what what it's going to look like. If I do want to revamp my D, what does that look like? And who is available? Who would be a top-tier D to work with Morgan Riley that could be available? And what's interesting, a buddy said to me today, is like, well, you wouldn't know unless you made a top-tier player available on the other side. Because a team might go, there's no way in hell they're trading that player. But would I make my top-tier guy available if yours was? Like, that's where these things come together.
Yeah.
Maybe that's conversations at the draft.
It very well could be, and you would assume that's going to happen. But again, using the Raptors as an example, by all accounts, they accumulated all the information on what OG Anunoby's worth. Now, maybe they place the worth higher than the rest of the league does, and that means they could be doing themselves a disservice on that.
Right.
But they know what Siakam can get in a deal. They believe they know what Fred VanVleet could have gotten at the deadline, possibly what they can get now in a sign-and-trade.
Right.
True Serum, do you believe the Leafs know what they could get for, use Mitch Marner as the example? Do you think at any point they've made calls or actively tried to receive calls to know what that would look like? I'm not sure they have.
I'll tell you what, you're onto a segment called Truth Serum.
I love that.
Truth Serum's happening. We just got to iron it out, but Truth Serum's coming.
I love
Truth
it.
Serum's coming in hot, and I love it. And we have to get an anonymous person to be the Truth Serum. Like, they answer our questions as if they're the person.
Okay. We can make that work.
Like a person behind a screen?
like the Wizard of Oz.
You know, like
the Wizard of Truth.
Like the witness protection, like there's that,
yeah, the muffled voice and everything.
Face, like
the Wizard of Truth. We just have somebody with that muffled voice like, I'm not sure about that. You know what I mean? Now we're talking.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's going to happen. The wheels are in motion here. We're flying already.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, Steve Phillips coming up. His take on, again, what's up with Vladdy? How much heat is on John Schneider, and is it appropriate levels? And what does he expect out of the Jays tonight, coming off two really, really embarrassing games? I mean, they had a position player wrapping up the game last night.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, it's really ugly after you blow a 6-0 lead the day before. That's terrible. So, Steve Phillips coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. We'll get to our best bets, brought to you by FanDuel a little bit later this afternoon. We'll have our Travelers picks tomorrow, another elevated event. Yeah. You guys are flying everywhere.
Pardon me?
Yeah, Travelers is elevated. Again, just
Dude, no way.
Yes.
That was like an afterthought tournament.
I'm telling you, it is elevated. It's the same as, was it Harbortown
Dude,
right after the Masters? Where
it's coming down to just what sponsors are in bed with Jay Monahan in the PGA Tour. How is the Travelers elevated right after a U.S. Open?
I know, but it is. It is.
So all the big boys are showing up there.
Yeah, minus a few, I'm guessing, but like they went, a lot of guys going from Toronto to L.A. to Hartford.
How stupid is that?
I know. It's just it's a goofy setup.
Hartford's gritty.
Hartford is. I actually drove past like a sign that said Hartford.
Yeah.
Turn left recently. I was like, I will be turning right. I am not going to Hartford. Not going to happen.
No.
Downtown Hartford is so.
They
used to play
gritty little town.
The Whalers
played
at a mall.
Yeah, the mall.
Yeah.
I wonder why it didn't work there. Moving on.
Maybe because when you skated out, this was a song. Bam, 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 ba, 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 bam, bam, ba, ba, bam, ba, 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 bam, bam.
It was Slapshot.
Like, put AC/DC on.
Great unis, though.
Yeah,
great uniforms.
Awesome.
All right, here's Steve Phillips, our TSN baseball analyst. How you doing, Steve?
Well, I was doing okay until I realized that I live fairly close to Hartford, and so I need to be a little bit concerned.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this, Steve. Do you ever go to a Whaler game? No.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
That's why they're not there anymore.
Yeah, no, nobody went to those games.
No.
I have been to a Hartford Yard Goats game, though, the minor league AA affiliate there for Rockies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing. It's a beautiful stadium in a nice area. So the Hartford's picking up, fellas. It's
Good.
picking up.
It's all right.
Good to
It's
hear.
coming
It's good to
together. It's
hear.
coming back. We love it. Yeah, shout out to Hartford.
There you go.
But, well, obviously, you know what the tone is like up here in Toronto, Steve. I'm sure you're aware after two of the most embarrassing games, I won't say in franchise history, but in recent history. You blow a 6-0 lead on Sunday. And then last night you just get pumped. And there's no life. There's no pushback. Their approach at the plate, they struck out 10 times, no walks. It's really sloppy. It's really a mess. And there's a certain amount of whipping boys, but the manager is probably taking the most heat. And I'm wondering how much heat you believe is appropriate. How much heat should be on John Schneider for what's been happening recently?
Yeah, I think, listen, I mean, the players play the game, but I do put some on managers. You know, I put some on Oliver Marmol in St. Louis, and so I think it's probably reasonably fair to consider the manager in Toronto. You know, there's something about experience. You know, when your team starts to struggle a little bit, if you've been through it before as a major league manager, there's a way to get through it. There's a tone to set. There's a way to answer questions. There's a way to respond. There's a way to pat guys on the back. There's a way to interact with your players after the game and before the game the next day. And, you know, I think that the manager's responsible for the work ethic, the preparation, the focus of the team, and obviously, to a degree, the results on the field. I mean, it's a results-based business. And so, you know, and where he can't catch and he can't throw, it's, you know, as a general manager, you don't go out there and catch and throw, but you understand that you've got some level of responsibility too. And so I don't think it's unfair to put it there, but I think it comes down to, you know, the players need to play, and he's got the right guys in the game for the most part when it comes to the lineup. They just have to go out there and perform. And, you know, there's only so much he can say to change a player's mood to get them on track, but there's something missing right now with this team. And, you know, at one point I thought it was just the maturity of transitioning from the good competitive team to, you know, a potential playoff team to a championship team. There's a level of growth and maturity and execution that happens in that process. We saw it over time with the Astros, where they were rebuilding and then they were challenging, and then, you know, they just make plays. You know, they put the ball in play. They make outs. They make the pitch when they need to. And the Jays they don't have it yet. And it feels like it's within their grasp, and that at some point they can get it. But, you know, the formula's not been right so far. Something's missing. Hard to put a finger on exactly what it is. I think if Vladdy gets going, and look, their underlying numbers. So I did a hit yesterday for SportsCenter, and I dug deep on some of the numbers for Vladdy. And his barrel rate, his hard hit percentage, those are actually better this year than last year. His launch angle is higher this year than last year. And so I think he's had some misfortune and some bad luck. And I do think if he keeps doing what he's doing, there is a hot streak coming, not to the level of 2021, but certainly better than what he's done so far this year. But they need it. They need to have it happen soon. They need margin for error. They need momentum. They need, you know, some relaxed at bats. And it just feels like everything's sort of sluggish and tense right now instead of intense. They're tense, and they're certainly not delivering in the clutch.
Steve, how far away are you? I know you said there's something missing there. What is the distance from something missing to something's wrong? Like, whether it be in the clubhouse, somebody's got a problem. You know how teams just, the way they're getting waxed sometimes, and it's like they'll have their ups, and then they have these games where it's like there's just nothing. The pitcher gets rocked, there's no offense, and it's abysmal. So how far is the distance from something's missing to something's wrong?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And so it's one that we're not there yet. And I think that, you know, we've seen teams make runs where, you know, the Phillies last year were certainly in a worse position than the Blue Jays are right now. And they came back and rallied, got the third wild card spot, went on to win a World Series. And things were missing. And you know, they had some injuries. They lost Hartford. Their bullpen wasn't right. They changed managers. They started to get hot. And so, but they did make a change, you know, and so the issue is not only that, but what the clock's ticking on the season. And certainly there's plenty of time still left to grind out and come back and get in the mix. And I mean, look, there's even a chance still that the Rays could struggle. They'll hit a wall like the Yankees did last year. Remember, the Yankees were playing out of their mind last year before they weren't when August came, and they sort of tailed off a little bit, and the gap got closed. And so that can happen to Tampa Bay this year. It doesn't feel like it right now, but it didn't feel like it last year for the Yankees. So I think you have to wait it out a little bit. It feels there's something different about, like, I look at San Diego, San Diego's manager, Bob Melvin, said it and he's right. They lack grit. They don't have Bobichette. They don't have Kiermaier, who are diving in Springer, diving and crashing into walls. And they're sort of a finesse team that has no sort of fight and grit to it. This team has it in there, but it comes down to execution as well. And that the consistency feeds off of each other, where one starting pitcher hands it over to the next one, and you don't get, a clunker from somebody every turn through the rotation, but you rattle some off a little bit. So, it's timing's part of it, but I think you play it out through the end of the season before you think something's wrong. And I don't propose changing managers, but I think that if what I would be doing is I would be behind the scenes supporting my manager, which doesn't mean just patting him on the back and telling him, hey, good job, hang in there, keep going. It'd be like, what are we doing? Coaches, what are we doing? Well, we don't want to make them uncomfortable. Well, you know what? Make them uncomfortable. I don't care if guys are uncomfortable. Comfort isn't getting them anywhere right now. So stir it up a little bit. Let's try everything we can to get it going. And play devil's advocate for the coaching staff and the manager, not in a way to criticize them, but to challenge their thinking to maybe consider some other options on ways that they can tweak things to get things going.
At what point, so you mentioned behind the scenes, you maybe have these conversations. At what point, if things continue, do you maybe get in front of a microphone, or who should be getting in front of a microphone to talk about either votes of support or maybe some of the things that you just laid out, if either positive or negatively?
Yeah, so I would never criticize the manager or coaches or the players publicly. I wouldn't do it. I don't believe that it's productive that way. But I do think that what I learned was, when the team's going well, the general manager doesn't have to be in the forefront. But when things are going poorly, the general manager needs to be standing there to answer questions, to be the one that the writers want to talk to instead of going to the manager, instead of going to the players. Let them ask me those questions, so that, because when you get asked every day, how come you're not hitting great? How come you're not hitting great? The first thing you think of is, I'm not hitting great. And so I want to be the buffer to where they can start to ask me, what are you thinking? What are you doing? What are you seeing? What's happening? So that the players don't have to do it, because that negative reinforcement, right? You tell your kids at the table, don't spill your milk. And so what do they picture? They picture themselves spilling milk, and then they do it. And so the same thing with players, I believe. They're just big kids sometimes. And, if the constant messaging is, how come you guys aren't hitting with runners in scoring position? What's missing on this team? Then it's that constant reinforcement that something's missing. I want to be the one answering that. So I think that for me, I would be front and center on the road, at home, whenever, answering all those questions. I'd have a scrum every day with the media in New York, just because it took up time and took them away and out of the clubhouse, so they didn't have to interact with the players.
You just mentioned the two guys, Ross Atkins and Schneider. And I think for a general manager, general managers have egos, and they generally think they're smarter than everyone else. In a lot of cases, that's why they have the job, Steve. You know that.
Hey, I resemble that remark, by the way. What do you mean?
It's just the nature of the business. That's why a lot of people are in the position. They're smart people and they believe in themselves. But when it comes to Schneider is just getting absolutely torched on social media. But we were talking about it earlier. How much is it like just a piece of paper in front of them with marching orders? And I think that's why the inexperienced Schneider type is a popular hire amongst GMs, because there's not a lot of pushback when they're told it's my way or the highway. For the transactions, it's just like, when that guy's up, this guy's going in, no questions asked. So they almost should be answering the questions.
Yeah, so every organization's different. They really are. And, in some organizations, there are suggestions made, and then the manager decides what to do. There are others where, the managers feel a certain thought of working through it. I'll give you an example. Dave Roberts, when he first started managing the Dodgers, they played the World Series against the Red Sox, and he didn't have Max Muncy and Cody Bellinger in the game against a left-handed pitcher. And they were two of his best hitters. And what's he doing? He's got Kiki Hernandez batting fourth. Like, what are we doing? And it was because the analytics were ruling the day. And the more he's been there and garnered some credibility and some collateral, he's sort of saying yes and no to some of those things, and then you started seeing some of those left-handed hitters in the lineup overall. And so, I don't think general managers choose managers that they can control, at least not thoughtfully and knowingly. And I think that for John Snyder, there was the relationship with Bichette and Guerrero and some of the young players on the team, that he had been there, managed with them, coached with them, been around them. And if you're making a change, you've got a guy that will maybe hold them a little more accountable and have some challenging where Charlie Montoyo didn't do it. So I think there was reasons to think that he was a right fit for them. But I think that as a general manager, and I'm going to be honest with you, you think to yourself sometimes, I got to kind of cover my own butt here a little bit too. And you do know that the manager is the buffer between you and your job. And you don't ever throw them under the bus. But I think that you also understand that you better take action on the manager before somebody decides to take action on you. And that's an honest answer. Yeah. It maybe isn't the right thing to do, but you at least think that way.
For sure. Well, we'll see what they've got in store tonight. Game 2 of the series down in Miami. Enjoy that one. We'll do it again later in the week. Thank you, Steve.
You got it, guys. My pleasure as always.
Steve Phillips, our Jays and MLB analyst. Game 2 of the series down in Miami, and we'll see what the Jays have in store. The lineup's back out. They got Merrifield hitting second again tonight. Like they're moving pieces around.
Well, Kikuchi's just got to.
Kikuchi's got to give him an outing for sure. Yeah. But you got to be realistic in terms of what that's going to look like. He's your 5th starter. Can he give you 6 innings tonight? Like that's kind of what you have to hope.
That's
for.
what we're hoping for. 6 over or under. Maybe we'll have a little chat about that later.
Wasn't
over
he
under
a gas
6
bag his last time out?
Yeah, it's been a lot of ups and downs for Yusei Kikuchi, and that's basically what we're talking about with the whole team. Like you're rolling the dice. I don't know what to expect. But
that's
let's
what
say
it seems like, Hayes, is every guy is taking a turn. When you're dialed in and winning, everybody steps up at different times. Now they're just rotating through guys who are taking dumps.
Yeah.
Starting pitcher, Vladdy, right. George Springer, Chapman, Gosman. They just take it. They rotate every night. Who's going to be the worst guy in the field?
Right.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Well, and that's the issue. Like if Kikuchi doesn't have it tonight, and let's say he gets blown up, well, the bats have to pick him up.
Yes.
You would have liked to have seen that last night. Barrios has been very good for this team. He had an off night.
Right.
Shouldn't be a guaranteed L. Yes.
No. Help
they're
him
going to put runs on the board. Score 12. I know it's easier said than done, but that's what you got to find a way to battle and stay in a game. And it just feels like it's been a long time since you really saw a big clutch hit early in a game to get things really cooking. Yeah. And it's just not the scene that the Jays are kind of dealing with right now.
Is there anybody that they're missing? Yeah, we'll go to.
We'll get into it later on. Jonas Siegel coming up and confirm and deny at about 45. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050.
Imagine that. Wheeling out. Like mullets, like getting intense for an NHL game. And that what is that, a trumpet?
I'm not sure really how to describe that. It sounds like a high school band.
Sounds like a game show host. Like
Yeah, it does sound like a game show.
No disrespect to the traditions. Like I played for the team for 2 years, but it's like, that ain't motivating anybody. Play AC/DC, Hell's Bells, and let's get rocking. Mm-hmm. Anyway, speaking of hockey, I've decided I'm going to start playing again. And if anybody would like to let me know an early morning game, Mimico or Etobicoke area, pickup only. Pickup only.
Okay.
I'm not joining a team. I'm not dealing with some crazy former junior C player running around like a lunatic. I'm 47. I'll join a senior league, like a bad C+ players. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm looking for.
Is that for the summertime you want to get back on the wheels? Or anytime soon? Wow.
Anything.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, I like that idea. I've had similar types of thoughts.
Yeah.
I haven't played in a long time. Maybe we get a little team going. Team? Maybe we can get a little super team going at some point. I think that's a pretty good idea.
Look, if you get a game, a hockey game, out in your area morning time, out in Whitby or Brooklyn or whatever, okay, I'll drive out there in the morning.
Well, there is apparently some really exclusive, I guess it's a hockey setup. There's this old rink right by my house. Really, really old, like classically old, gritty bar. That's a great place.
Right.
And I guess there's some kind of secret league that's been run out of there forever, basically being run by guys in the neighborhood. And it's very difficult to get in, but in order to get in, there's
What
like a
are you
pecking order.
talking about?
And you basically have to try out, is what I'm getting to. Like, if you want to be in this league, you have to go out there for a couple of twirls. And they
Chrissy, start a poll. If Hayes and O-Dog tried out, would we make the club?
throw that out there.
Would we
and
make
let's
the
see.
secret club?
The secret club. That, again, is by no means...
And
like,
it's not secret anymore.
yeah, I've kind of, I guess, handed it out, but I haven't really announced, the
place.
place and the rank, and it doesn't matter. The whole world can know. It doesn't mean you're just going to show up and be able to play.
Right.
It's a private ice and
We
all
gotta
that.
So
get
these
into
guys
this.
put eyes on you and say yes or no.
That's what I've been told. You kind of got to go out there for a couple of buffer skates, and then some guy will eventually pull you aside and say,
Didn't make it.
I don't think you're going to be playing with us.
Oh
Yeah,
my
I don't think you'll be playing.
God.
Apparently they do that at
Oh
St.
my
Andrews.
God.
Like if you have a high handicap, or if your handicap is not accurate,
Yeah.
like let's say you go over there, you say you're a 10,
Yeah.
and you chop it off the tee. Apparently the starter will come over to you and say, you're not playing St. Andrews today.
Wow.
See you later. Wouldn't that be a sickening feeling? Anyway, hour 2 coming up. Confirm and deny at 5:30. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.